It's the Tiny and Nate Show. I'm Tiny.
And I'm Nate, here to help you create time and money freedom through real estate investing,
so that you can live a life full of impact and joy.
All right, we are live on YouTube.
Here.
Welcome back, Tiny.
What's up, YouTube?
What's up, YouTube?
Hey,
all right.
everybody.
So, oh, there it is. There's that baritone we all know and love. Tiny, we need to get you to sing something like Old Man River. I don't know, something that just really takes advantage of your baritone one of these days.
When I wake up in the morning, it's like 2 octaves lower sometimes, and I just like will wake everyone up. So some old
or you get a cold or something like that. Yeah. I got you.
Best.
Well, today I was really inspired this week in my conversations with realtors and other investors. I got this challenge question, which is like, oh, it's a terrible market to wholesale or flip. Actually, she was talking about flipping. It's a terrible market to flip houses in. And I thought, it's a terrible market to have the attitude that's a terrible market to flip houses in.
I actually encourage, I don't tell people I'm doing that, but I'll encourage that. Yeah. Oh gosh, it's the worst.
It is. You should
just
stay out
one
of it
less
for sure.
It's like it's so hard. It's so tough. Yeah. Check. You're not gonna have to compete with that person.
Perfect. So what I thought we could do today is kind of run through a couple of things. Like if somebody is interested in wholesaling houses or in flipping houses, we'll just kind of run through the stuff that we've learned about what you need to do either of those. And if we have extra time at the end, I'd love to know your thoughts. Right now, would you call it a buyer's market or a seller's market?
Oh, I mean, definitely a seller's market for sure. Strong seller's market. It's not like insane like it was, but it's still very strong seller's market. And then hopefully we'll get to something about, what are the tools and skills needed to succeed in a seller's market, and what are the tools and skills needed to succeed in a buyer's market, and when does that change, and how does it change your approach? So those are things to think of kind of long term. I definitely, people getting into this, can lose sight of. It's like, hey, this goes through cycles. Don't just get into it for one thing, or assume it's always going to be the same, because it changes.
Okay, I'm with you. So I'm going to show a little graphic here from Google Trends. And while I do this, you be thinking, what does it take to wholesale or flip a house in the hot 2022 market? And then I'll come back to you in just a second.
Got it. Sure.
So this is a graphic from Google Trends. It goes back through 2018 on the left here. The blue line is the search term wholesaling houses. The red line is the search term flipping houses. And what you notice back here in 2018 is that, the term flipping has probably got wholesaling beat by 10x or so. But as you come up here towards 2020 and 2021, wholesaling is starting to beat out as a search term the term flipping houses. And I'm just curious, anecdotally, I know you maybe haven't done all the full research, but why do you think, just anecdotally, what comes to your mind, why do you think that trend might be happening?
Well, it's interesting because stats are one of those things where it's like, how do you interpret this statistic? It's very open to interpretation. So for sure, what I don't think we're trying to point out is wholesaling is more popular than flipping. I don't think that's what that chart necessarily says. I think the novelty of it and people being aware of it as a tool is growing in popularity and going, wait, what is, because I mean, how many agents have you talked to who don't even know what wholesaling is? Like a good amount of them, like they just don't know, and which is fine. But it's kind of sad, because it's like, well, that's a whole tool in your tool belt as a real estate professional you could have, because some properties just aren't right for going on market. And I'm sure there's plenty of people who would argue with me on that. But when you think about like what's the best for the seller, if you want to go that route, which is, I found it serves people pretty well. Sometimes there's stuff going on in the life circumstances that putting it on market, putting them through that public process is really not the best thing. So I think more and more people are starting to, and it's also with YouTube and different influencers, I think it's becoming more popular. Some of the mentors that we have really spent so much money, time, and effort and passion explaining and teaching, like, hey, here's the right way to do this. Here's what this involves. And so hopefully today we can kind of break down a little bit of our experience of what it is and what you need to know before you get into it, and just the different steps. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I do think the renaissance of information on YouTube, I think there was information back in the 80s and 90s, but it was all on VHS cassettes and $20,000 hotel room lobbies, meet you at the back of the room to get this course.
That's right.
Or mentorship. But there's just such a proliferation of information. I also wonder if there wasn't some of that trend can't be somewhat tagged on people stuck at home trying to figure out how to make money post flu.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Big time. Big time.
Yeah, there's such a low barrier to entry to get started wholesaling that, you know, I think a lot of people could try and get into just making that their job. I also do think there's probably been a multiple waves of people that have learned digital marketing that has said that they've looked at the real estate market and gone, well, I could generate leads for other buyers. And so I wonder if those wave of contributions are what created that uptick in wholesaling.
Hard to know, but I can definitely. Your hypothesis is logical to me. You have all these things coming together of people having to stay home or having to switch jobs or having to learn new skill sets. And going, well, how do I make money from staying home? The double-edged sword of its low barrier to entry. I was telling someone this today. Because it's not very difficult to get into, it also opens itself up to being done very poorly. So that's something I think we're pretty passionate about, and groups we're involved on or in of, hey, how do we make wholesaling not a dirty word? How do we redeem it as an industry? And I think making sure people are not doing it right according to us, but like being real estate professionals, doing it in a way that's going to serve people, not hurt them. And so I'm very passionate about that because it's a big deal. Like real estate's a big deal.
I agree with that. And I think there's a simple algorithm somebody could follow, which is if I go in to wholesaling, but rather, if I go into real estate investing and I'm going to use wholesaling, I should go in prepared to buy and flip or rehab any of the projects that I'm going to be offering on. And so let's do this really quick. What does it take to wholesale or flip a house in a hot 2022 market today? Just kind of we can use Boblet as an example. The first one that comes to mind is the ability to fund the project. And so for Boblet, we used hard money and private money. You want to discuss those real quick?
Yeah, super critical. And this is just a conscience thing and how we choose to do business. Like being able to close on a deal before you ever make an offer on it, I think is just really critical. Like you're making an offer to another human being on their home, you better be able to make it happen. You don't have to at the end of the day, but if something fell through, knowing that you have the ability to do that will help you sleep better at night. And just, I think that's how I agree with you. That's how you should start. With the funding, so a combination of private money to put down the down payment. So what do we have skin in the game? Absolutely. Earnest money plus part of the down payment came from us, but we also helped a passive investor increase their wealth by growing their money through interest that we're paying to them, instead of having their money just in like the stock market. So that's a way to add value, but also to source some of the money so you don't have to come up with it completely on your own. Now, as far as, if I'm remembering this correctly, as far as the rehab budget goes, I believe our partner who's doing the construction, or who's actually a business partner of ours, I believe he's paid the construction costs on his business lines of credit of his construction company, and then is using draws from the hard money lender to pay back for the work after it's completed. So, do you want to break down how that works?
Just really quickly, I want to define those two terms in case somebody's totally new to this world. Hard money versus private money. Private money is somebody you know, like, and trust, probably a friend or a family member who's going to provide a short-term loan, maybe for a down payment, maybe for the rehab, to get you into an investment property. And maybe they're going to provide 5, 10, 20% of the buy price. And then the hard money is an institutional lender who's looking at the value of that property, making sure that you're buying it, let's say, cheap enough so that when it's fixed up, that they're very confident they're going to get their money back. They're also going to provide a portion of the rehab funds if you need them, and they're going to provide that in draws. So as the work is completed, you're going to be able to write to them and say, all right, we're complete. Send your guy out, take a picture, notice how the floors and the paint is done. And they're going to put that $20K back for the floors and the paint or the cabinets back into your account from that hard money loan. So those are the terms that we're dealing there with on funding.
And a couple details in what you just said.
Yes.
You can do that multiple times. So you don't have to wait until the project is complete to do that. You can do it as many
with the
times.
Draws? Are you talking about the draws?
The draws, yep.
You're talking about the draws, yeah.
I am. And there's a cost to that for the inspector to come out. It varies, but I think it's around $200 to $300. But to get those, $10,000 draws to help keeping the project moving forward can be really helpful. And sometimes it's just worth it. You bake it in at the beginning of the project. The other thing about that is, please be aware that when you're sourcing money from a private source, there are SEC guidelines you need to abide by. This is something that kind of caught us by surprise, but it's all good. You just need to know what you're doing, because when you raise private money, if the person you're raising money from is not considered like a sophisticated investor or a qualified investor, you will be breaking rules. So you need to get the right paperwork. There's a bunch of rules, but it is fairly straightforward to understand. You just need to know it exists and it's a thing.
This is a good time to say we are not lawyers, we are not doctors, and you are a realtor. I'm not a realtor, but we are not SEC lawyers. So just Google that, SEC lawyer near you, or we can maybe we can put a referral in the bottom of the link after this episode.
Yeah, I've got a great one that we can put in the comments. But there's some phenomenal people who dedicate their life to instructing business people on those rules because they want you to do it right, and you want to do it right. Trust me. So
yep.
Just know, that's part of being in this world of real estate. Is like there's stuff like that. It's like, oh, okay. But it doesn't have to stop you from moving forward. We're just trying to help you not step in potholes.
For sure. And I just want to mention one other thing that's occurring to me. If somebody's getting into this for the first time and they're not sure where they're going to get their rehab budget, Home Depot, Lowe's, those guys all have credit cards and lines of credit that you can sign up for. If you need to pay for cabinets, you think you can get this thing flipped in enough time to resell and pay that off, then great. That is an option as well. If you're needing to use debt or consumer debt, this is probably the only kind of consumer debt I would ever recommend, is if you've got a great deal and you need to rehab it and you need a way to do that quickly and effectively. That could be an option for people, don't you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's different from a credit card. It's lines of credit. So yeah, it works. If someone's not familiar with that, it does work a little differently. But yeah, it's great.
So before you need money, what do you need before you need money?
A deal.
You need a deal.
You need a deal.
Give me a deal, Tiny. I need a deal.
Yeah. It's you were saying, I think one of the first questions you asked me was like, what's the hardest part, or like what's so different about doing it in 2022?
Yeah.
I think it's like the stomach and the grit involved in finding a good deal, like an actual deal, versus just someone who's like, I'd sell if it was the right price. There's lots of those people. People who actually need to sell and that you can serve by helping them do that. I think that's what separates people who are successful in markets like this, like we're in right now, and people who are saying, man, this is really impossible to do. So that's what I would say is like, well, yeah, it's tough, but there's also a ton of people that need help.
Yep. Okay. So let's talk about just practically go through them really quick, because we've done lots of other episodes on this, but getting leads and finding great deals. What's worked for us, what's worked for our friends, what's worked for our mentors. Just bang through just a quick list, Reader's Digest style.
Okay. So there's the whole just physical in person door knocking. There's the cold calling, which I'm not saying these in any particular order. There's the networking. There's the driving for dollars. Networking is such a huge thing, but I'll just stick with driving for dollars for now. Going around neighborhoods and looking for dilapidated homes that have distressed markings, or they just look like that doesn't fit here. Something's going on. Someone's having a hard time keeping up with this for whatever reason. That's a very good thing to look for. Real estate agents who have properties that they can't sell. That's a big one. Back on market, properties that have gone on and off market multiple times in 6 months. There's some pain there. The thing you're looking for the most is motivation. However you uncover it isn't as important. There's more efficient ways and some more cost-effective ways, and some easier and some harder. But they all work if you do them enough. It's once you find somebody, do they have motivation and can you solve their problem? If those two things exist, then that's the making of a deal. I would say that's the beginning of a deal.
Yep. I think there's different kinds of sellers that we've discovered. Some are in pain and some are looking for pleasure, right? So some are looking for a higher price, and that's where some creative terms can come in. Other times, it is some sort of pain. We've bought from people who, whose houses are physically distressed, roofs falling in. We've bought from people who are going through difficult things in life, like divorce. We've bought from people who are looking for more pleasure, like, hey, I just want to get this kind of banged up house sold so I can go buy myself an RV and get out of Dodge. So everybody that is selling is looking for something. It's not that you've probably heard this before. Like when somebody goes out and buys a drill, it's not that they want to drill. They want what the drill can accomplish for them, right? So finding they want holes in the wall, and why they actually don't even really want holes in the wall. They want beautiful shelves on the wall, and they don't actually just want beautiful shelves on the wall. They want the feeling that they get when all their stuff and their knickknacks are just gorgeous right behind them. And they don't even just want that. Right. They want their friends to look at their shelves and go, "Ooh, you've got it put together." So there's these deeper.
That's it right there. Pavlov's whatever. Right? Yeah. Hierarchy of need.
And so
you got it.
So finding that desired pain or pain relief or desired pleasure, and making sure that is just included in the part of the conversation, if not part of the deal, right? Because the part of the deal could be, I can't close until X, Y, and Z. I can't close until we get through court for our divorce. I can't close until this piece of paperwork's done that says how we're going to split the proceeds of the house. So it's as important to know how something's going to get done as it is whether the person's going to actually sell to you. So that's part of finding a great lead and a great deal, I believe, as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to someone the other day who's trying to buy a property, and they're trying to figure out if they need help or not. I'm like, well, I want to be involved in that meeting where we discover if there's actual motivation or not, because I don't want to invest a bunch of my time into putting together a deal if we don't know they're actually motivated. Because if they're not, that's going to be a huge waste. So that
isn't there a lot of people out there? Yeah. I think there's a lot of people out there who just want to use you as the wholesaler or flipper or investor or buyer to find out kind of what does the market say about my house? What's the value? Well, dude, you can look that up on Redfin. Well, what they really want is another human being to validate maybe the value of their house for some other reason, or to check what their realtor told them, etc. Right? And they're never actually going to sell it to you.
Because those can be real time wasters. Another thing that we've experienced and heard secondhand is going with a servant heart, like really giving a crap about the people you're working with, and not only finding out what they need, but being genuinely vested in helping them achieve that. People can sense that. So if that's not really a thing that motivates you, I feel like the business that we're in when we wear a wholesaler hat is getting people unstuck. That's what we get paid for. People are stuck in some way, and we get paid to help them get unstuck, get them from where they are to where they want to go. That's how we make our money there.
Yep. That's right.
For sure.
I believe in that. So funding, hard money, private money, leads, finding a great deal. How do you know if it's a great deal? You have to have the ability to underwrite the project. Sounds like a fancy insurance word.
Some homework and learning.
Yeah. But I think in essence, if somebody wanted to get in and figure out, hey, do you have any quick tips? I have one and I'll share it, but you think about yours. Any quick tips for underwriting fast and dirty to find out if something's a deal? I'll give mine. You can get in, if you've got an address of a property or a lead, if you can get on Redfin or Zillow and look for another house that's been flipped. And how do you know if it's flipped? Normally they're either staged or they're vacant, and the photos, everything looks great. New quartz countertops, new vinyl plank flooring, new paint. It looks real clean in there. Or maybe somewhere in the Yep. Maybe in the description it says recently renovated. That's an obvious. If you look and see how much those sold for, you can basically do, let's say it's a pretty average house, a 3-bed, 2-bath. You can multiply the price that sold for somewhere between 60 and 80% to find a possible. I know that's a super big price range, but I'm just giving a very quick rule of thumb. So let's say somebody is in the neighborhood and they're willing to sell you a house for $100,000, and there's other houses that look similar size, but they were flipped and they sold for $300,000. Well, you know you're at 33%, so that's probably going to be a deal. So you can use that somewhere between 60 and 80% rule to figure out if you've even got something that an investor or a flipper could look at and buy.
Right, and like another person I was talking to today, that percentage, because it is a big range, that 20% is pretty huge.
Yeah,
that percentage
is a big range.
It's going to depend on your local market or whatever market you're working in. Some markets are just way more competitive, and so the margins are a lot smaller, and what you can expect to get on an assignment fee as a wholesale deal maker is generally going to be lower in highly competitive spaces. The lower the competition and the more unique your service is as a wholesaler in solving those problems, and the more valuable those properties are, the better the deals they are, the higher your assignment fees can be. So I think that's a good way. That's probably my favorite way of kind of a back of napkin math, how to figure out an offer price is the way you just described. Because it's not just using like a Zillow estimate or a Redfin estimate or a combination of all the above, which we do use from time to time. It's using, hey, what's something that really happened? But that requires a comp, like a pretty solid comp. What you just described is, I would say, is a great comp. You're not always going to have that. I hate to recommend a shortcut, but because the real thing you need to do is learn how to comp properties and underwrite like an appraiser. Jerry Norton has a good one. Jamil Damji has a great video on how to underwrite properties using appraisal rules. That's not real estate agent rules. There's wonderful agents. There's also ones that make up kind of crazy numbers because they spin this narrative that like builds up the price of this home. It's like, actually, that's by a main road, and that comp is 6 miles away, and doesn't have water. Like, there's these things that I'm exaggerating.
Hey, my property is 1960s, and the one you said is a comp that shows me it's worth $1 million is built in 2020. Not a comp.
Not a comp. That's 3 stories. This is one. Not a comp. That's a mobile home. That's stick built. Not a comp. Yeah, I feel like that's a comedian skit way to happen. Like, you're redneck if it's like, it's not a comp if. Like,
so I get, again, just the hard and fast easy rule is just find something that looks very similar. Same number of stories, same number of bedrooms, same number of baths, similar number of square footage, and this is the shortcut. So you're not always going to be able to find it. You're right. You're not always going to find a comp, but if you can find something that looks similar from the front, from the facade, and you can see that it's similar in size, and you can see that the lot is also similar in size, meaning the land that it's on, and it's been recently rehabbed and resold, that price can be your after repair value, and that's how you can do a quick underwriting, quick calculation. Paperwork and the
I was going to say, that's not going to tell you your rehab cost necessarily, because that varies wildly by who you use and how you finish it. But it will give you the numbers you need to start for making an offer.
That's right. And we can go over how we're estimating our rehab costs later. And there is wide variety in that. One guy's going to want to come in and spend minimal, like $10K, and keep it as a rental. Another guy's maybe going to want to come in and spend 60, 70, 80, 100K and create this gorgeous, masterpiece. So there's big range there as well.
Totally depends. Yep.
All right, we're on number 7, paperwork, and I'm going to do paperwork, and number 8, the title company. So when we first got started, I'm sure we just Googled purchase and sale agreement, and there's a lot of different things out there. I think some shortcuts people could take is get with a realtor or get with a title company or get with an attorney to get the right paperwork. Don't you think?
Yes, and I'll add to that. I consulted another wholesaler in a different state that I knew from someone else. I knew them.
There you go.
It was a friend of a friend kind of thing, and so my friend vouched for them, so I had a reason to trust them, and I knew what they were about. But that's where we got, that's where our contracts were kind of born, is taking them. Now they were in a different state, so we changed them quite a bit. But having a starting place, and this stuff's not copywritten; they're contracts. So, well, make sure whatever you're using isn't copywritten. But anyways, make it your own. Make sure you're complying with all the rules you need to. That's important, very important. But also finding the right people to work with it's a game changer. So, joining wholesaling groups in your area. Don't be afraid. Like this mindset of like, there's not enough, so I don't want anyone else to know I'm doing this, or I don't want anybody to steal my deals or anything like that. Dump that mindset. It's not helpful, and it's not serving other people or you. Work together. Just do it, and be known as a giver. Be known as someone who brings value, and people will bring you value because they're like, wow, maybe they know a lot more about this than I do. Anyways, that will lead you to title companies who are awesome to work with. That's one of the ways we found ours, and it takes a little bit to find your team, but once you find them, oh my gosh, it makes life so wonderful, especially if you can be a consistent source of business and just wonderful to work with. Be organized. Like, don't be a pain in the butt. Don't ask them for the same thing over and over. Be professional, and they'll treat you really well. That's been our experience, I would say.
Yeah, so get a Google Suite together. I think one of the things that's really helped us is to make sure within our Google Suite that we've got a folder for all of our client files. And so you've got the address, you've got prospective clients, you've got current clients, you've got finished contracts. So for each project, there's a client folder, there's a template that we follow out, there's a checklist. That way, when you need a piece of documentation for your title company, you can get that for them quickly, and you're not going to waste a bunch of time searching around for stuff. Is that what you're talking about when you say be organized?
Just like a real estate brokerage. That's the same basic methodology that a brokerage is going to use. But they have to do it. Like, they're very required to keep all that documentation together. But it makes sense. Like, if you're going to do this professionally, be organized. And yeah, it's way better than having a desk full of paperwork. Have it all digitally and just keep it organized. Keeps your business process moving forward too.
Well, in Google Suite, we couldn't run our business without Google Suite because we have team members all over the United States and all over the world, and everybody can access the docs inside of there. Absolutely.
That's right.
So that's a big one. We keep our paperwork organized that way, and that way we can get it over to the title company. Number 9 is an attorney. How have we used attorneys to either wholesale or fix and flip?
Yeah. So sometimes you'll run into the need to have a contract that's not just a regular purchase and sale agreement or a regular assignment contract. Say you're raising private capital and you need to ensure, you basically need a permanent document, a living document, I should say, that is legally enforceable and says where money's coming from, what it's being exchanged for, where the security is. It's for this property. That's called a promissory note or a deed of trust. So having those documents written up correctly by a professional who is a real estate attorney is really important, and they're not that expensive. Like, I don't know.
What if we spent $300, $400, $500 when we're
I think it was like $700 total, and that included like a couple hours of his time and a bunch of emails and the actual paperwork documentation itself. But man, so worth it. Like, being able to say, hey, investor, this is done properly. Here's all the correct documents. Here's the attorney we worked with. It gives everyone peace of mind knowing that, everything's done just the right way. You didn't Google it and make it up as you go. Don't do that.
Right. Yep. For sure. And the price range may vary for the work that needs to be done. But when you're talking about multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars or transactions or millions, if you're getting into multifamily, then yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it to have that. And that person needs to be on your team anyhow. Number 10 is contractors. So we have done this in sort of a unique way. Not everybody has the, let's call it the blessing that we do to have a third partner who runs a building crew. But finding that contractor that you can trust, that's not going to run off with your deposits or your materials. How could people go about that in your mind? What are some ideas?
That's a great question. I
know.
I completely agree with you. I don't know. I don't even know exactly how we, like, it's not like we intended to find that. It just was a relationship that kind of led to that. But it was, I would say use your network, and you might not realize how big your network is. Chances are you know more than like 0 people. And so you don't have to know them directly, but use people who the people you know trust. And so I call that leveraging trust. I'm sure I didn't make that up, but like I leverage trust all the time. And it's a way of making shortcuts and speeding business along and other relationships. It's like if my neighbor has a mechanic that he really trusts and has gone to for 15 years, and I trust my neighbor, then I can trust my neighbor's mechanic. So I do that all the time. That's a way I would use to find contractors. I would not just go on internet reviews. I would not just go online and like, oh, well, this person said that they did great. Like, I've had that burn me so many times in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Actual people with firsthand knowledge is what I would recommend. And it's all about how you frame it. No pun intended. If you go to them and say, hey, I'm looking to set up a really mutually beneficial, I can't talk today, a relationship that works for you and it works for us, where we're bringing you deals, you've got employees to pay, you've got jobs you need to get done, and I need houses that need to get flipped. I have houses that need to get flipped. So I would love to earn the right to be, have a partnership with you by earning your trust in one deal. Let's date before we get married. Don't just throw LLC docs in someone's face and go, I want to be your partner. I would say no. But try them and hopefully on like kind of a smaller scale thing. So if you have a remodel versus a total gut, or you say, this one needs a kitchen and it's cosmetic, definitely start with something like that, or even have them do something smaller. Do they answer the phone? Are they good with communication, like bills and stuff like that? Do they show up? Do they do good work? Things like that. That's what I would start with.
I think you could also leverage the investor community, right? If you get out there and start networking, whether it's Facebook groups or otherwise, finding people that are actually flipping houses right now. And that could be something huge that you if you were to go to work for a flipper, that would be another thing that you could do to find out, hey, who are you using for your subs and your contractor? I want to add one more thing to that, which is I liked your idea of starting on a smaller project before you go into a full gut. Start on a light aesthetic renovation. Your costs are going to be lower. You're going to see, how quickly they can get some work done. And I would also encourage people to give their contractors incentives, cash incentives, to get the project done on a timeline, because then they really are becoming like partners for you, and time is money. If you're using hard money or private money that each month you're having to make that interest payment, if let's say your monthly interest payment is $1,500 or $2,500, well, if they can shorten your time window from 4 months down to 2 months, 3 months, then maybe you give them a portion of that interest payment as their incentive to get that project done.
Exactly. Hey, I'm going to pay you $500 cash to get this done by this date. 0 if it's after that date, but 500 if it's this date, or whatever it is. That's pretty motivating. You're aligning them with what you need as a business owner.
I would just say, I would add one more thing to that. Like, let them know why. If these are hardworking men and women, and let them know I'm paying the X dollars in interest each month, and so to make you as close to a partner as possible, and align our incentives, this is what we're going for. So contractors, we've got once the contracting work. Yes. And what?
So people who are doing remodeling work in your community, so people who have
Yeah.
remodeling businesses, they are
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
likely great buyers. So if you've got a deal of a house that needs to be flipped, they're already tooled up to do it. So if you didn't want to hire them exclusively, or you didn't just want to hire them to do your projects, you might say, "Hey, I've got all the projects I can do right now, but I've got this great deal. Do you want to buy it?"
Yeah.
That's another great way to both build relationships with them to where they can do work for you and they can be a customer of yours.
I love that. I love that. All right, let's talk about listing agents, stagers, and photographers. I put these all in one bundle here
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
now that the work is done, you've got to actually sell it to be profitable, right?
Right.
First, the controversial question: why not just sell it for sale by owner after you've fixed something up and keep more of the profits?
Great question. I think the way to answer that is it depends on your business plan. If you plan on doing a relatively small volume of these a year, great, go for it. If you have the skills, resources, and the time and the energy, and honestly, just the desire to do that work, fantastic. The operational drag it will add to your business is significant. So if you what I go back to is like, what's your highest best use of your time? Finding out what your superpower is will lead you to that and going, okay, I'm best used. I can bring the most value if I do these things. Is listing our house, staging it, putting it on the MLS, contacting, doing all the stuff. Is that is that my highest best use? If it's not, then don't do it. Either have
Mm,
someone on your team do it or hire a professional who's good to work with and likely will take a smaller amount of pay because you're saying, "Hey, I want to work with you over and over again." But you have to do
yep.
that.
Yep.
You can't just
Yep.
string someone out. So yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
would say.
and I think to run some numbers by people, different friends and colleagues that we've worked with, there's kind of a wide
Mhm,
range, right? If you've got I'll start at the lowest, and listing agents out there are going to hate that I even said that, but said what I'm about to say. But I mean, maybe you're going to do 20 deals this year, 20
mhm,
flips, and they're willing to take $1,000 per deal to
mm,
coordinate the photographer, get it on the MLS,
mhm,
and put their sign out front as the listing agent.
mhm,
Why? Well, one, because you've committed to 20 projects for them for that year. What is the benefit for that agent? They're going to get massive exposure with their sign on all of your flips, right? Which is leads. That's buyer and seller leads for them as
mhm,
well, with their
mhm,
sign as they get sign calls and whatnot, getting their name out in the community. Not every agent's,
mhm,
some agents are going to punch you for even suggesting this. And I think you do have to have volume and you do have to have commitment to them in order to get that. So what
Do
could
it
be a
over the
step up from
phone.
that? Yeah, yeah, do it over the phone, not in person. I think a step up from that could be somebody that provides a discount on their normal 3%. Maybe they provide
Sure.
you 1%, 1.5%, 2%,
Yep.
2.5%.
Mhm.
That's just the negotiation with that listing agent. But yeah, I think the ones that I think do an awesome job are those that are going to provide that connection and coordination of the stager and the photographer. Would you disagree?
No, I wouldn't, and I would say um, it's a combination and kind of balance of like what you want, what's important to you as a business owner, uh,
Right.
and the agent. Like an agent who's just starting out is far more likely to love having listings and feeling like they're succeeding and being busy and doing work and learning a ton. Like think of all the learning that they're going to have if they're a part of 20 deals this year that they didn't have to go get versus the 4 to 6 that they on average probably would have done if they did really good, if they worked really hard. So they didn't have to do anything to go get it. If they're not doing the above and beyond services that an agent would is totally earning when they get their full commission, they might be open to making less but having something more consistent. An agent getting a consistent paycheck is not synonymous with being a real estate agent. So
Hmm.
having something that they can count on and go, "Oh, wow, you're on pace to do 20 days a year." Don't make those numbers up, like actually have something behind that. But if you can, that you're offering them a lot. That stability is valuable. So just know the agent you have in mind or that you don't know yet, different things are going to be more important or less important to them. That's what I'll say to that.
And your professional opinion on professional photos versus iPhone?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Why pay for it?
It's just like the dumbest thing when I see people take crappy cell phone pictures of real estate. I mean, seriously, like, I get it if you're going to list something on Facebook Marketplace that's like a tennis shoe or like a nice sneaker or something, like, or a bicycle. But if it's a piece of real estate and it's a house or whatnot, and especially if it's halfway decent, show it off. Like, you need great photos. You need lighting done. Like, it's not just something you can whip out your iPhone and like, oh, look at this. I just think you're really dumb if you do that, personally. That's how I really feel about it. I don't think it's that expensive. I think it's like $500.
Right. So. Don't you think $500 that's going to get a massive when the buyer views those photos on the MLS, the feeling is so different when you see professional photos versus when you see the quick cell phone photos with funky angles
blurry, and everything. So. The lighting's bad. It's like a sign. It's like a sign when you drive past a business. If you and you don't think about this, your brain does this calculation on its own. If you see a crappy sign, you assume the business is struggling. If you see a bright, brilliant sign that's well lit, it's clean, and it's clearly articulating whatever they do, you assume that's a pretty good business. You don't think about it actively. Your brain just like does that. Photos on a house are the same way. Oh, it's probably more well taken care of. It's probably cleaner. It's probably more like structurally intact. I'm probably going to be happier living here. Like, there's all this stuff that goes on in your head you don't even think about when the photos don't suck. When they're conversely, it's like, ooh, I wonder, this probably wasn't taken care of. They didn't even pay a photographer. What else is wrong with this place?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we've gone for over 40 minutes now here, hitting our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So funding to close quick, hard money, private money, leads and great deals, ability to underwrite, paperwork, title company, attorney, contractor, listing agent, stager, photographer. Who the heck would want to get into this in 22? This sounds too difficult, doesn't it?
That's great. I don't want people who are afraid of hard work in this industry. This is not easy. I'll just I'll pop everyone's balloon right now. But it's amazing. It's amazing. Like, the people you get to work with, the problems you get to solve, the feeling you get when you take a family who is stuck and you help them get unstuck. There's no replacing that. Like, that's amazing. And it pays really well if you know what you're doing. So I personally think it's phenomenal. It's my favorite thing I've ever done. It's also one of the craziest things I've ever done. Like, you get into some nuts stuff. Like, what? But it's really fulfilling, and it's also challenging, I think. You also don't have to know all this stuff from the get-go. You don't.
That's right.
Like, we didn't.
We didn't have all 13 of these in place on our first few deals.
No, we didn't have an attorney. We didn't have a listing agent. We didn't have stager, photographer, contractor when we really started. We didn't know what title company we were going to use. We were educating ourselves on the other 5. Ability to underwrite. We had that. Leads, or actually, you learned that. Had the ability to close, the hard money. And by the way, the ability to close doesn't mean it has to be your money. Right? People go, well, I can't do that because I don't have 300 grand, 400 grand. Neither did I. Neither did you. It doesn't have to be your money. It can be a hard money source. You just have to learn how that works, because that's really important. They know how it works. It's important.
Absolutely. And we didn't even get into creative finance or seller finance deals or subject to on that, but we'll leave that for another day. But that's good. So that's a 13 point checklist for even if you don't feel confident that you can get all of that done, just know that, put that on your fridge or on your desk as stuff that as you go along, be asking who in the community can help you connect with these people. Because once you get these people in your life, or these skills in your life, you're going to explode, because you're going to have answers to all the main questions on how to flip and or wholesale.
Totally. And man, you bring up a great point. That's the tip of the iceberg. you can do it with just that knowledge. But when you start adding onto it in your tool belt, basically all the ways to acquire a piece of property and all the ways to disposition it or sell it. If you have, we're finally, well, I shouldn't say finally, it's been less than a year, but we're in the position right now where if there's someone who's motivated, there's pretty much no situation we can't work through, which is phenomenal. Think of all the problems we can solve now. So whether it's building a deck or coming up with a crazy strategy for financing, or helping them move, or fixing some kind of social issue that they've got going on in their life, if you're willing to do the messy work, or hire it out, which is, I would advocate for that, you can do a lot of good and get paid really well.
Yep. Awesome. Well, that is a wrap for today. In about 15 minutes, we've got a guest, Dane Larson, coming on. He's going to give us his lowdown on how he house hacked his first property. And if you don't know what house hacking is, if you're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, you're going to definitely want to watch this episode on house hacking. I'll give you the punchline of it. The punchline of it is his friends are all paying for his mortgage and cash flowing him over $1,000 a month on his first house that he ever bought as a 20-something-year-old. That is a hot way to get started in real estate investing. We'll have that in about 15 minutes.
I love it. Yep, we had a guest on a couple weeks ago, similar idea, keto, I think. And it was genius. He was like, well, this is cool. I want to do this again. So yeah, that's going to be a great one. Yeah. That was 20 years later,
I know. So I know. Exactly. All right. Tiny.
Good. Nate,
thank you.
Real. It's been fun. I'll see you on the next one.
Been good.
Cue that outro.
Outro.
It's the Tiny and Nate Show. I'm Tiny.
And I'm Nate, here to help you create time and money freedom through real estate investing,
so that you can live a life full of impact and joy.